Hello and welcome to Kerbal Space Program 101. Now this video is intended for new players to the game and not to the veterans. As such, if you're a regular viewer of me, you might find this a little boring. But let's forge on nonetheless, because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that want to know how to play this hilariously entertaining and or geeky space flight game. So as you start up, you are shown the Space Center. This is where you perform all your operations. You have the spaceplane hangar and the vehicle assembly building where you build flying machines. Now, in the real world, I'm sure you know that planes were built generally before rockets, and so you might naively presume that planes are easier to build than rockets, and that would be completely wrong, and that way will lead to you crashing lots. Instead, I can say with no stronger recommendation, you must build rockets first. And so if you click on the vehicle assembly building, you start out with a selection of capsules in the top left hand corner. Now on the left side you have all your parts. Along the top you have a bunch of buttons which we will get to later, and down here you're going to have your staging. So before you can build anything, you must pick one of these command pods. This is the one I would recommend. It is a regular space capsule. It is designed for one pilot and it has positions to attach rocket motors and parachutes. So we click on it and it's in the middle of the command building, the vehicle assembly building. So you can click on this with the left mouse button and drag it around. You can use the mouse wheel to move up and down in the vehicle assembly building, and of course if you drag that up and down it will move. Holding the right button down and dragging will adjust your angle of view. And most importantly, on the left side you can see a whole bunch of items to add. And we're going to build possibly the simplest rocket you can. Along here you have all the items that you can add are split into tabs. There are 7 tabs, and probably the first one you want to go to is the 6th one, which is the Utilities tab. And at the bottom of the first page you have the Mark 16 parachute. You can pick that up with the left button, drag it across, and once it's there it will turn green and snap onto the front of your rocket. Now, this isn't a rocket yet because we haven't had an engine, but once we are coming back down, we want that parachute so that we can keep our pilot alive. Now, the next thing we probably want is a decoupler. A decoupler is what is used to interface two objects together and detach them at some later point. Now, so if we click on the structural tab at the very top and we look down, there is a large decoupler for very large rockets. That would look very silly. Instead, find the TR-18A stack decoupler. This is the right size for our rocket. Now you see when I added that, it appeared on the side here. This is the staging display, and this is what will happen when I hit the spacebar. If I hit the spacebar, this will decouple, and then the parachute will fire the next time. This will happen in flight, of course. So now we're going to add an actual engine, and the easiest way to add an engine to this is to use a solid rocket booster. So if we go to the propulsion tab, which is the second one, you use the page controls on the bottom here. We go to page 2 and we have the RT-10 solid rocket booster. There is the larger one you can try, but this is just about the simplest rocket you can build in the game. So let us go up to the top right corner. We have the green button to launch, and that's us ready to go. As we launch, we're ready. This is the flight display screen. So what we're seeing here, the most important things to see is at the top left you have the mission elapsed time. In the middle you have an instrument panel which includes a very nice abort button. It has an altitude, atmospheric pressure, your vertical speed. You have buttons here to turn on light, landing gear, and brakes. Resources show you how much power and fuel you have on your spacecraft. As your spacecraft uses up fuel, you can see these getting depleted here. In the bottom on the middle, you have your artificial horizon. Now, right now you are pointing straight up. That's why everything is blue. If it turns all orange and you are firing thrusters, you are heading straight down into the ground. So be wary of this. On the left side is the throttle. This needle here shows you how much throttle you're generating. And on the right side here, is your g-force meter. This here is your velocity, which can be switched between orbital and surface velocity. You'll notice that if I switch to orbit velocity, you actually have 174.6 meters per second, and that is because the planet Kerbin actually rotates on its axis. So even when you're sitting still, you're actually in an orbit in big, finger quotes, which will fall into the middle of the planet. So in the bottom left corner, you have your staging display and your pitch adjust. Basically, these are your control inputs. As I hit space, these will fire, and you can adjust these. But when I hit space first, that means my solid rocket booster will fire. There we go. So it is now flying upwards. And in theory, I can control this thing by using the W, A, S, and D keys, as well as a Q and E. Now, Q and E will roll, as you see. I can press A and D to pitch in those directions. Now, the directions are on the nav ball is what matters. So if I now switch this around, I'm pitching in the opposite direction. And then I can pitch north and south using W and S. Now, after a short amount of time, all the fuel in the solid rocket motor has burned out. There's no way to refuel these things. They fire once at 100% throttle, and then once they're burned out, you drop them. And so how do I drop them? I drop them by hitting the space bar to activate the next stage. And there we go. So the capsule is now flying through the air in a ballistic path. You can see at the top the vertical velocity meter is still showing going up. And as we reach the apex, it starts to go over, and now we are starting to fall downwards towards the surface. And as we fall downwards, we're going to pick up speed. And it's going to take a little while to get there, but before we land, we probably want to deploy the parachute. And the way we deploy the parachute is by hitting the spacebar. So, spacebar hits and the parachute deploys. Now, it only partially deploys. You see it's in this partially deployed state. It's slowing us down a little, but not a huge amount. Once we get to 500 meters, it will deploy fully. You see it yellow here to show partially deployed. So if we're wanting to go down to the surface fast, we can use the time acceleration mode. And the time acceleration mode is accessed using the dot or the full stop and the comma keys. So if I hit these buttons, you see up in the top left the time acceleration happening. And if I hit the comma key, it slows down. So now I'm coming down a little closer to the surface. That object there is the spent booster. You can see that it has fallen ahead of us a little. It will hit the ground before I do. I'm just going to time accelerate through this. I want to be very careful that I do not time accelerate too fast when I hit 500 meters, because that's when the parachute opens. And it's not unknown for the parachute to rip off when you're using it in time accelerated mode. And so we're coming down, and I'm just going to watch for the shadow and come out of time acceleration again, because it's not unknown for bad things to happen at time acceleration. You notice the parachute is now green in the bottom left. And there we are, we have completed our mission. And so we can now go on to bigger and greater things. So we press escape, end flight, and go back to the vehicle assembly building. So we're going to improve on this design. We're going to get rid of that low-tech solid rocket booster which has no throttle control, and instead we're going to put on a regular fuel tank. We're just going to take this little one and this tiny engine. That will give us a good start. So again, you notice on the side we have the same setup. We're just going to fly this. Click on the launch button and it'll load the launch pad. So now, to fire this, if I hit the space bar, nothing happens. And the reason is my throttle on the left side is 0. Now, to increase that, I hold the shift button. It's a good idea to do this before you actually activate your stage, so you're going at maximum thrust. But there we are, we're going straight up, and I'm more or less going to keep this for some altitude. Again, you can mess around with the controls here. See, I'm pushing the S button to turn south, in this case. If I press the W button, watch the nav ball. Now we're kind of pointing north on the nav ball. It's very important that you learn to pay attention to the nav ball when you're flying rather than looking at your spacecraft, because again, if I rotate this by 90 degrees and then I push W and S, you see that it's now rotating in different axes. So you want to learn how to fly your spacecraft with the nav ball, and it's very important to be able to hold a spot, such as the straight up vertical spot on this. Hold that for while you're performing a maneuver. Also note that on the nav ball in the bottom there is a green thing that looks like it's like a cross, half a cross with a circle in it. That is your velocity vector. That shows you where you're going. So this has proper Newtonian physics, this game. So as I turn, the thing will try to follow what I'm doing, but it won't immediately respond. It's not like X-Wing fighters in Star Wars where things magically turn using the atmosphere. Although you can use the atmosphere here, but in space you have to basically kill your velocity, working against Newton's laws of motion. So yeah, let's wait for this thing to drop down. Oh, the other thing to see, of course, is this one with a cross in the middle. That is my negative velocity vector, my retrograde vector, and you see that as I fly towards it, my velocity drops towards 0. Let's try and hit it again. If I'm chasing this, I'm wasting all my fuel. Yeah, so it's a good idea to get practiced with this. Now we've dropped, all our fuel has gone, and we're now starting to drop down. So again, press the space bar to jettison the stage, and space bar again to activate the parachute. And now that will fall back to the surface on its own, and we don't need to go through all this again. We've seen it before. So let's end flight. We're going to build something a little bigger now. We're going to take this spacecraft into orbit. So this is going to be a guide on how to actually get into orbit. We're going to take this stage that we've already built, and we're going to build a larger rocket underneath it. So we're looking at the top here for the FLT 400 fuel tank, and we're going to attach that underneath. And you see, oh, I made a mistake here. What we need is a decoupler here. There we go. So now you see as we put that on, it has covered up the rocket. It's not going to be used right away. We're going to put 3 of these FLT 400 fuel tanks on it. And underneath that, we're going to put the LVT engine, basically. This is the small engine here. There's 2 small engines. You do not want the giant one. You don't want this really tiny one. You don't want this one. There's a lot of engines you don't want. You want either this one or this one, right? They're similar. They're similar, and they'll work relatively well. The other thing I would suggest is that you go through to the Aero tab, which has wings and other things that work in the atmosphere. And on the second page, you have the AVR8 winglet, and we're going to put some wings on this to help steer it in the lower atmosphere. Now, this is a rocket. If you just put a wing on, that will want to turn over because this wing puts drag on one side and no drag on the other. So you'd want to put another wing on the other side, and you can see I can't quite get that straight. Well, thankfully there's a tool to help us. Down here in the bottom left corner, there is the symmetry tool. So you can click on symmetry mode, and it shows 4 slices there. That means it's going to put 4 items on. So watch this. There we have it. Four wings on the bottom of this rocket, providing me a complete set of steering. Now these wings will become useless as we get higher up, but by that point we will be switching to this upper stage. So let us take you through flying into orbit with this. So here we are on the launch pad, ready to go. Now, pre-flight preparations are very important. First, you're going to need the map, which is accessed using the M key. Now, the map you can turn using the right button, just like you did in the hangar. This shows the world which you are on. And at the bottom here, if you click this, you can bring up the nav ball. And this is going to be very important because you're going to want to use the nav ball to help you get into orbit. So do this before you get into orbit. You don't want to be scrambling around trying to hit this thing while you're panicking about what way your rockets are firing. So come out of this by pressing M again. Before we launch this time, we're going to hit the throttle all the way to maximum. And then once that's there, we hit the spacebar and we go. Now for the first 10 kilometers, we want to go straight up. And the reason is the atmosphere is going to slow us down if we try to go sideways. The atmosphere is one of the biggest problems with getting into orbit around Kerbin. The Kerbin being the planet that you start on. Gravity is kind of hard, but without the atmosphere, it would be a lot easier. So we're aiming straight up at full throttle, but as we get our velocity above about 150 meters per second, we are going to slow down our thrust a little so that we're not overdoing our work against the atmosphere, right? We're just going to try and keep it between 150 and 200 before we reach 10 kilometers. And we're watching the numbers up the top. This is 6,000 meters right now. And it's 7,000 meters, and I'm just backing off the throttle. Once we get above 10 kilometers, what we're going to do is we're going to start to go to the right on this. We're going to go towards 90 degrees on the nav ball, which is east, and we're going to try and get it to about 45 degrees pitch and throttle up again. So now we've gone through the thick part of the atmosphere, and we're pushing our thrust up, and we're trying to aim for 45 degrees. Now, watch as our fuel runs down. The next thing we're going to wait for is our engine is going to burn all our fuel out in these tanks. And you can either mouse over the tanks with the right button to see that, or you can look in the bottom left, you can see it happening, and you'll see it burn out. So there we are. We press space to drop the stage and space to fire our new stage. Now, we're going to fly this tiny one all the way into orbit. That thing just helped us get up to to high altitudes. Now we're going to go the rest of the way using this tiny thing. I would suggest hitting caps lock and then T. That will help stabilize your vehicle and make it a lot less squirrely. Now we're going to press M to go into map mode. We're still aiming around 45 degrees. Now what I'm going to look at is the map. You can see now that this orbit is being marked out for me, predicting my path. So I am going to watch the apoapse. I want to make that above 100. I want to make that to 100. So by keeping my nav ball between about 40 and 10, I will continue to get higher and higher in the atmosphere or above the planet, and my projected maximum height will get higher and higher. So once this number reaches 100, you're going to hit the X key to cancel all thrust. So you don't want it to go up too steep. You want to make sure you're going sideways. That's more efficient to go sideways than it is to go upwards. And go. There we go. So now we have 2 minutes and 30 seconds before we hit that. So I'm going to use something called a maneuver node to figure out my final correction burn to get into a circular orbit. So what I do is I click on the orbit near apoapse and add maneuver. And this little thing pops up, and this little thing pops up with a number of directions on it. And you want to grab the little one that looks like the back of a plane again. Grab it and then drag it sideways. And you see this dotted line? That shows the projected orbit after my circularizing burn. Now, you can see here this dotted line goes all the way around, and it tells me my apoapse is 104 and my periapse is 99, and that's a pretty good circular orbit. Down here it's telling me that I'm going to have to burn 633.5 meters per second. That's how much my velocity has to change. The estimated burn is going to be 32 seconds, which means I need to run my engines at full throttle for 32 seconds. And then it says my node is in T minus 1 minute 20 seconds. So, what in that time, that 1 minute and 20 seconds, I want to find the blue reticule on the nav ball. That is where I will want to be pointing, and you want to stick your spacecraft exactly on that. And you can time accelerate a little if you like. Because you're going to do a burn for 32 seconds, you probably want to start 15 seconds prior. You want to do, you know, an equal time either side of this. And so I'm now burning. You see my throttle going up, and you see my orbit starting to change. There's my spacecraft, but I'm going to do this in map mode just so you get an idea of what's going on. As I'm thrusting, my orbit starts to get further and further out. And also, as I'm thrusting, the blue reticule will tend to shift. So as you get closer to the end, you might want to throttle back just a little so you get more time to react to these things. You want to get this as close to 0 as possible. There we go. That's 3.7 meters per second away from my ideal. And it says my apoapse is 101 and my periapse is 97. So if I just click on the orbit again, the maneuver node, that's me in my final orbit. There you go. We are in a stable, roughly 100 kilometer orbit above Kerbin, and we have a spacecraft with fuel. So what can we do? Well, we can do some basic orbital maneuvers up here. And the classic one is to move myself into a higher orbit. So let me set up a maneuver node to do that. So again, you move the mouse pointer over a point in the orbit. And unfortunately wants to do that. And then you drag to accelerate, or you can drag to decelerate. You see it goes down. You can also try things like adjusting your inclination. If you want to do such a thing, I wouldn't do that. And you can also burn radially. That doesn't work so well either. Actually, this maneuver node system gives you gives me a really good opportunity to explain something here. Now we're in orbit. If we want to get back, what do? Well, we can add a maneuver to get back. And we add a maneuver to get back, and we would burn, well, some people would burn towards the planet, right? So that's this one. So let's try and see what happens. We're going to do this, and the idea is we want our periapse to get down to about 30 kilometers, so the atmosphere really slows us. So they're 34 kilometers, and it tells us that we're going to need 226 meters per second of delta V, right? Well, that's a really dumb way to do it. To do this properly, you create a maneuver which burns retrograde to slow your orbit down. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to bring it down to 34 kilometers. And we'll see how much fuel is needed. 49. Come on. It'd be nice if I could watch these numbers. 46. 41. There we go. We're pretty close. But you see, 55.2 meters per second, right? That means we're taking roughly 1/4 of the fuel requirements if you burn retrograde, as opposed to if you just point your spacecraft straight down and burn. It's a really bad idea to deorbit that way. You want to use the most efficient way. Anyway, instead, we're going to move to higher orbit. So I grab this and extend it up. And there we go. That's a 279. There, 315 kilometers. Okay. So we're ready to go for this burn. It says it's going to be a 6-second burn in 2 minutes time. So let's point at the reticule. And now with 2 minutes to go, I really do want to use the time acceleration. So I hit the dot key. And when you're under time acceleration, unless you're under physical time acceleration, which you don't need to know about right now, you can't turn your spacecraft, so don't try. Give yourself a little bit of time to perform maneuvers just before your time runs out. So there we go. 10 seconds to maneuver. And I'm going to put it right in the middle. I'm going to start burning at 3 seconds before. And burn for 6 seconds. There we go. 100% thrust. And watch the bar go down. And there. So that's me completed the maneuver. And you can see my new altitude is going to be 312. So if we're going to circularize this, I click on it and again burn outwards. Oh, and so that's 372. I overdid it just a little. Bring it back. There, oh, there we go. 312, 307. Just a little bit of fine tuning here. 310, 310. There we go. I think that'll do us. So it tells us we're going to need 134. This one is really a long way away. So we definitely want to use time acceleration. So I'm hitting the dot button and you see up here the time acceleration arrows are working. This saves us a lot of time, but you don't want to overshoot. So watch your node T minus here and slow down your time acceleration as you get closer so that you have ample opportunity to adjust your orbit, adjust your orientation in orbit. And 2 minutes. I'm far too impatient. There we go. So you'll notice the blue marker is over here near the direct orbit marker, or the prograde marker as many people call it. So I'm just going to get right on that and get ready for my burn. It says 9 seconds, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and I'm going to start burning now. There we go, and stop. There, what a brilliant orbit. 312 by 306. We are in a perfectly good orbit now. And now we're stopping here for a while. We can actually admire the planet in space, from space, in all its glory. You can even press C to view it from the capsule. Unfortunately, the capsule has a really tiny window. If we just slow things down, maybe I can rotate around and see the ground. No. Let's look at the nav ball. There we go. There, that puts us perpendicular. Ah, there's the planet below us. How peaceful it looks. Well, we shall be returning there in a moment, and remembering what I said about the return, well, we're going to point ourselves, we're going to do this without a maneuver node now, we're just going to point ourselves at the retrograde vector and burn up all our fuel. So here we go. It's easy enough. We have plenty of fuel here, so we can totally do it. We don't need to mess around with the maneuver nodes. We're just going to kill our velocity and more or less drop down to the planet. Actually, I might just aim for the spaceport to see if I can land very close. Let me see. That's the spaceport there, and there's some islands just off the coast. So let's see what happens. Maybe I'll run out of fuel before... Oh, there. Yeah, I ran out of fuel before that anyway. So I'm going to end up in the ocean just to the east of the spaceport. But nonetheless, that's a pretty good descent path. So I'm going to jettison that stage in preparation for re-entry. Oh. And now time accelerate again. And you'll watch as we start to fall towards the planet. Now this is version 0.18. They have yet to add re-entry heating. So you can hit the atmosphere at any angle. I'm not going to be surprised if they add that in some future version, so you might as well line your capsule up with the retrograde vector. That way you'll have the blunt side facing down towards the planet, where the heat shield will probably be. It's also entirely possible that this rocket design gets rendered useless by a future update which requires heat shields, but you know, I've done 2 getting to orbit tutorials with different versions of the game, and I really thought that it was time to update it again because the addition of the maneuver node system adds a whole lot of new features that are worth looking at. They don't help. The maneuver nodes don't help you get off the ground so well, but they do help you get circularize your orbit. So you can just see the spaceport there from a distance. There's also a little airstrip there that you can visit. Now I'm coming through the atmosphere. It is killing my velocity. You see the G-forces getting up above 10 Gs, 12, almost 12 Gs. Oh my goodness. Jebediah Kerman truly is a hero. Normally in a real spacecraft you would not come down so steep. This is a game. Now once your velocity drops below a few hundred meters per second, you can deploy your parachute and accelerate your way to splash down. Just remember 500 meters is where the parachute opens. You don't want to time accelerate through that. There we go. And then time accelerate again to finish getting to the surface. And we are coming down well within recovery range of Kerbal Space Center. So that's the basics. I think we've covered, building some very basic rockets, orbiting, simple maneuvers in space. I'm really glad to go back over these basics because it's been far too long since I've covered them for many people. If you want to find the more advanced stuff, I have tons of videos on them. Don't worry, there's plenty to do in the game. Build rockets, crash, blow things up, enjoy yourself. I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.